Good morning. We're starting a few minutes late, but we're going to go ahead. We've had a change in our order of presenters. Our con presenter for Proposition 1 seems to be delayed. So we want to make good use of your time. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and have the local city measures first. So I'm Susan Newhouse from the League of Women Voters, and I'm glad to see all of you here this morning. I think we'll have other people coming in as we go along. There's a lot going on in the city today. What we're going to do is we have your agenda. Hopefully that you got one by the back of the door. Things we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about, as you heard, Proposition 1, which is the water bond. We're going to then have and that's going to be Linda Seifert, our Solano County Supervisor, and Barbara Berrigan-Perea, who's no on Prop 1. And then we're going to have, but we're going to start our program, as I said, with Measure B. And we are likely to have Heather McLaughlin, who's our city attorney, is going to be presenting that and talking. She's just going to give information. We are not doing a pro and con on that measure, but we wanted you to have the opportunity to ask questions. There will be people walking around with questions and with cards for you to write your questions on and collect them so that she can then answer that. We'll do that for each section of the agenda. Then we'll have Measure C, Benicia Measure C, which is the sales tax initiative. And we're lucky to have two of our prominent businessmen who are going to be discussing that with us. Pro will be Mike Ikemedes, and on the no side, the con side, will be Bill Simpkins. And then we will have a short break. After that, there are lots of cookies and other refreshments out in the hallway, and there also are materials that for you to look at between the time we have the other presenters of the Board of Unified School District candidates. This forum is co-sponsored today. We're very lucky. The League of Women Voters has two great co-sponsors, the Benicia City Open Government Commission and the AAUW, the American Association of University Women. Vallejo and Benicia have joined us today to sponsor this forum. The only other thing I wanted to just make sure you know is that the forum is meant to be one that is unbiased, that none of the sponsors have a position or are voicing a position today on any of the propositions, measures, or the candidates. We want to support the full and fair discussion of issues among speakers and candidates as a service to the voters. And in line with that, we ask that you do not take any pictures, video recordings, or cell phones during the presentation. It is being taped. We're very pleased that we will have this taped. It's being streamed live if people at home are watching it. And then it'll be rebroadcast on Comcast Channel 27 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. And it'll be broadcast, I understand, on Wednesday at 7 p.m. and Saturday 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for today, Belinda Smith, who is a past president of the League of Women Voters, very active with us still, as well as a lot of community involvement. Belinda Smith.
Thank you all for coming this morning. I'm going to go over the ground rules that the candidates received and signed a statement, even though Heather didn't have to do that, but I will go over the ground rules for this morning. We expect civil, respectful behavior at all times. Not at this point, but candidates are instructed to refrain from personal attacks or charges and not to interrupt one another. Candidate responses should pertain to the question at hand. I will interrupt you if you stray. I will enforce time limits. We have timers over there that will be keeping time for our candidates when they're up there. The broadcast is being taped, and all the candidates agreed, and people that are involved, to not use the tape in any way. It cannot, and if it is used, it has to be used with the permission of the League of Women Voters and used in its entirety. And once again, we ask that no cell phones, no recordings being taken during the presentation. Well, since Heather is just going to just making a presentation, I'll repeat the other ones later on. But I'd like to introduce Heather Chinshu McLaughlin, the City Attorney of the City of Benicia. She has been the City Attorney for the City of Benicia since 1997. Prior to that time, Ms. McLaughlin served as Assistant City Attorney for the cities of Alameda, Woodland, and Dixon. She also served as Assistant General Counsel to the Alameda Reuse and Redevelopment Authority. She has given presentations on a variety of subjects, including the Brown Act, the Political Reform Act, the Public Records Act, whistleblowing, and Benicia Open Government Ordinance. She has also lectured on public works and base closure issues. She is an active member of the City Attorney's Department of the League of California Cities and has at various times served as chapter editor and section writer for the League's Municipal Law Handbook, member of the Public Works, Transportation, and Telecommunications Policy Committee, member of the Legal Advice Advocacy Committee, member of a committee that prepared an ethics guide for city attorneys, Municipal Law Institute Committee, and member of the League's Brown Act Committee. She is also the city's representative to ABAG Plan, an insurance and risk management group, and has been elected president twice. Ms. McLaughlin received her bachelor's degree in ancient Greek from Bryn Mawr College. She received her Juris Doctorate degree from the University of California at Davis, and she is an enthusiastic member of Seroptimus International of Benicia and has served as president of the Benicia Club. Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you very much. So it's kind of odd sitting in this chair right here. I'm used to being over on the side. It's more comfortable over there, I think. So I'm here to talk to you about Measure B. Measure B is the question before you all on whether the treasurer should be an appointed position or an elected position. The City Council decided unanimously to put this on the ballot for you to decide. There's several good reasons, I think, that they did this. First off, we have had an elected treasurer since the forming of the city, but over time, the way that the city finances have been handled has changed over time. When the city was initially formed, finances and holding of the investments was done by the city treasurer. But as technology and the way the banking world has changed over time, the money is not actually held here in the city, it's held off in banks and other places. So the need for a person to have actual physical custody of the money is no longer there. And with the change in banking rules, and as well as the new stricter auditing rules that the city has as a result of the bankruptcy of Orange County, and even as recently as the Bellasort financial mess, the rules for city treasurers are very strict. The rules the city has to comply with are very strict. We have annual audits now done by independent auditors. City of Benicia is fortunate because we also have the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is made up of 5 members appointed, 5 residents appointed by the City Council and the mayor to look over the finances. They meet monthly, they review the books, they provide input, suggestions, changes, and when they think something's not right, they bring it to the council's attention. So duties that used to be performed by the treasurer now are performed by city staff. City staff is hired, and we actually go through a recruitment process to find somebody qualified to do that work. Whereas an elected treasurer, the only requirement for an elected treasurer is that you be 18 and a resident. So you could be 18 and somebody like me who's not too good at numbers and be appointed treasurer. If you move the position to an appointed position, you can then select for qualifications. The council has done its best over time to make this so that the qualifications are clear to people who want to run for treasurer. They've amended the municipal code, and now they have desirable qualifications. So like you're supposed to have a knowledge of municipal finances, knowledges of the methods and practices of how things are done in the finance world. So that's helped for sure. But it still is a outstanding issue. The treasurer, some people have said, provide watchdog authority, and I don't know that that's as true as it was back in the old days. Nowadays, the Finance Committee and the city auditors have essentially taken over that role. Another question that came up is why can't we just eliminate the position of city treasurer? City of Benicia is a general law city, and under state code, general law cities are required to have a city treasurer. So we can't entirely eliminate the position, but you can make it appointed. And if it's made appointed, then the council can either decide to have an individual that meets their qualifications be treasurer, or they can decide that the finance director or another finance staff person is the city treasurer. Many of the cities that have gone to an appointed treasurer, if not nearly all of them, now have the finance director or a staff member in the finance department holding the title of city treasurer. The one thing that's come up is, are they going to save billions and billions of dollars if you change this? Well, probably not. City treasurer right now gets a $200 a month stipend plus retirement benefits, but that's an ongoing cost that will be saved if the position is made appointed. So I think those are all the things that we need to know about city treasurer that I can say in an impartial manner. Are there any questions?
We do have one question that I can ask you. The other one is more for a pro-con. But one of the questions is, does this position involve financial decision-making or simply accounting of funds?
So it does not involve financial decision-making. The decision-making is now done by the city council and the finance director and city manager. So it has no real decision-making authority anymore. Over time, the duties have been transferred to the city finance director, and then other duties have been transferred off to the county.
So I'll ask another question. So currently, the elected position, what is their, and you may have stated this, but what do they do right now?
The elected city treasurer currently is a member of the finance committee, and now I'm going to get tripped up on this. I believe they're only an ex officio and don't have voting powers, although that was in works. The council was going to consider it before we lost our last treasurer. So that is their main duty. They had office hours, I believe, sometimes in the finance department, and they can look over any of the books just like anyone else can, but no other duties.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Heather. All right, do you have a written question?
Yeah, if you were to appoint the treasurer, would the salary change from retirement benefits at $200 a month? Would that be different?
So that is something that the city council could decide. They could decide to make it more, or if they put it in with somebody else's job, then they could eliminate that.
We would prefer that you write them, and I have another question. They'll bring you a card right now. I do have another question.
Anybody else want to write a question?
If the city council appoints a staff member as treasurer, will they be paid the treasurer's salary as well as their staff pay, or will there be a savings to the city?
So I don't anticipate that they would be paid extra for doing duties that they already do. So I would expect that the council would eliminate that, but that would be a council's decision.
Okay, thank you. We're going to wait for this last one here. Thank you. What is the cost of retirement pension?
So the cost of the retirement for the city treasurer varies. It depends partly on their age and things like that, but it would be based off the $200 a month salary.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
McLaughlin. We're just going to take a minute now to have Mr. Simpkin come up and Mr. Archimedes come up. Thank you. I'm going to actually add some other, since we have a pro-con speaker, some other little rules that we have. Each speaker will be given 10 minutes for opening statements and 1 minute to respond to questions and 2 minutes for closing statements. They did pick a card to decide who was going to go first, and we will strictly observe the time limits. Who's going to be our sign person? Susan, so please keep an eye on Susan and she'll time you through this. We will also be alternating who answers the question first. Okay. So I'm just going to read their bios here. Mr. Ikemedes is a longtime Benicia resident, a former local business owner, and former center council member. He has also served on the Benicia Planning Commission and Economic Development Board. Welcome, Mr. Ikemedes. Mr. Simpkins. Bill Simpkins has been a Benicia resident since 1979. He raised 2 children to adulthood in this community. In 1983, he established Simpkins Auto Care and has been at his present location in the Arsenal Complex since 1994. Since that time, he has been more involved with the politics of keeping his business healthy and thriving. Bill is a past Lions Club president and considers himself a casual, concerned observer of the business world in Benicia. Welcome, Mr. Simpkins. And I believe in the drawing, Mr. Ikemedes is going to be the first speaker, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and anybody else who's supporting this endeavor here today. It's always a welcome opportunity to be able to talk about issues and discuss them from various different perspectives. I'm not here really to advocate for a particular position. I'm just here, honestly, I mean, I'm in favor of the sales tax increase, but I think it's more important to disseminate information and allow you folks and whoever might be watching this later to make up your own minds. I think it's important that we understand what the parameters of the decision-making process are and what the implications are. I think what's really first and foremost, what's most important is that this is a proactive measure, that the city right now is in good, solid financial footing and has weathered the past economic storm fairly well. In fact, comparative to other cities, very well. But one of the major roles of city government and city staff is not just to deal with what's happening today, but to look out into the future. And while no one's crystal ball is perfect, the numbers usually give you a pretty accurate indication of what's coming down the road. And things have changed for the city. Revenue streams have changed and expenses have changed. And so the city needs to adapt to those. And so while we're going to be talking a lot about a sales tax increase, what we're really talking about is change. Things are different now than they were 2 or 3 years ago. And as we look forward, we can see that they're going to continue to change. And so the city needs to adapt to those changes and to meet the new challenges. What the numbers are telling the city council is that revenue is down. And even though they've done their best to not only to hold expenses at their current level, but they've actually decreased expenses dramatically. But as we look out into the future, by the end of this fiscal year of July of next year, we're looking at about a $1.5 million shortfall. And how do you address that? What do you do? Well, they're doing a number of different things. They're looking at they're having a third party come in and take a look at their organizational structure and see how they're doing business, what areas it can be improved, and what things can be done to make it more efficient. They're also looking at cost allocations. So they're looking at some of the fixed expenses that are in the budget are broadly applied to everything, something like insurance or workers' comp. And now they're looking at it and saying, well, let's break this down. Let's look and see exactly how much it costs to run the pool. How much does it cost to run the libraries, individual entities, rather than looking at it as a whole picture. Again, these are prudent, professional measures that need to be done and are being done. But the reality is that there's a shortfall. Now, why is there a shortfall? In the recession, revenue streams were changed dramatically. Property taxes, key source of revenue for the city, dropped dramatically, and as everybody's well aware, property values dropped. Not as severe in Benicia as in some other areas, but Benicia was not untouched by this. Another prime source of revenue for the city is sales tax. That too has dropped and has changed dramatically. Benicia, in a way, is very fortunate in that the majority of its sales tax does not come from traditional retail. It's not us as citizens going to the local store and the purchases that we make there. The majority of Benicia, the city of Benicia's revenue stream is coming from the industrial park. That, unfortunately, has changed. And it is changed primarily because there's been a change in the business mix in the park. Even though that the park itself has gone, its occupancy rate has gotten back to pre-recession levels, the type of businesses that are there now are more focused on shipping and warehouse. And those types of businesses aren't producing sales tax. And so if you look at one, and this is what we have to be careful when we look at numbers, if you look at one set of numbers and it says, well, our occupancy rate in our industrial park, our prime sales tax producer, is roughly about where it was before, it's the type of businesses that have filled those spaces. And so the city is looking at that, and again, with property values coming back close to where they were before, but a lot of them are people are protesting and contesting their property values, and so that there's some of that money is in flux in terms of exactly how much is going to be coming to the city. The city needs to look at ways to increase revenue. But before they did that, there was a long series of measures that were taken to look at expenses. And I think she's telling me, she's either saying hi or 5 minutes. Hi, how you doing? That's okay. So as the recession hit, there were a number of measures that were taken, and primarily a lot of them focused on labor costs, because Benicia is what is called a full-service city. And you're going to hear that term a lot, but it's an important term. A full-service city is a city that provides all of the services internally. We are not part of a regional measure, a regional organization for something like police or fire or a library. Everything that Benicia does as a city does here. And in fact, what's really unique about it is that I believe that Benicia is the only full-service city of its size in the entire Bay Area. Of all the 9 counties that touch the Bay, I think Benicia is the only city that's under 50,000 people that is a full-service city. Now, for us residents, that's great. I mean, we enjoy a great quality of life here because we have everything right here, and it is controlled by one elected body, which is the council that sits up here. But that also can come with costs. And so the fact that we are a full-service city is something that needs to be factored in as we're looking forward and we're analyzing this. And so if you compare us to other cities of our size, you need to always remember this city is tasked with providing a lot more in service than most other cities this size. But the other piece to that puzzle, in fact, that we're a full-service city, is that it's very labor-intensive. And so the labor costs for a city like Benicia are a fairly substantial big piece of our budget. The city council in, I think it was 2008, 2009, it was when I was on council, we entered into a series of negotiations, actually two rounds of negotiations with city employees, looking at pension costs, looking at everything that was a labor-related cost. And there were the employees stepped up to the plate, and there have been significant expenses that have been reduced. The city employees have not taken a raise. In fact, I don't think any of them are even due for a raise until like 2017, and that's a 1% raise. So they've gone from 2008 until 2017 without any raises. They've also actually had most of them have had their payroll, their income reduced, and there have been eliminations of positions. To give you an idea, I think with our parks, just to kind of put it in perspective, I think the average city has about, 3 to 5 acres per capita, 3 to 5 acres of parks per capita, and Benicia has like 9 or close to 10 acres of parks per capita, so we have a tremendous more parks than most cities have, and yet our staffing levels for our park maintenance is about 50% of where it should be. So the city has looked and done what it can do to cut expenses and still maintain services. But at some point, you don't cut your way out of these problems. You have to look and find other sources of revenue. So the city commissioned a survey. There was a statistically accurate survey. They made some phone calls, they talked to people, they reached out to the community, and the overwhelming response, something like 65%, said, you know what, if it's a difference between having a 1-cent sales tax increase and having a cut in services, I'm for the sales tax increase. And so now the city's looking and saying, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to go out and put it on a ballot. So it's not a decision by the council, it's a decision by us and the community. And that's pretty much where we are. You've got a full-service city that is providing all these services, that has attached to that a labor cost. You've got a labor force within the city that has stepped up to the plate and has had their wages reduced, has had their benefit expenses, their personal benefit expenses increased. They've done what they can do, and now it's time to look for different revenue sources. And so this is just the first step as the city moves forward in repositioning itself with its new realities.
Thank you, Mr. Archimedes. And I apologize, I neglected to read the measure before they started. I got spoiled by Heather doing the first one. So I'm going to read the measure. The City Council of Benicia does ordain as follows, and this is in your voter pamphlet, so I'm just reading from there. It says, unlike many cities of similar size in the Bay Area, Benicia is a full-service city, equipped with its own city-run police, fire, library, park and recreation, and water services. And without additional revenue, the city will be forced to consider cutting back on locally controlled city services and contracting with the county or other outside entities to provide these services. And the city wishes to continue to address service priorities that the public has identified, such as public safety services, 911 emergency response times, neighborhood police patrols, crime prevention services, and programs for youth, and pothole repair efforts. And additional funding will improve public safety in city streets, maintain parks and trim trees, and fund programs to support our historic downtown and community events, attract new businesses, and create jobs. Additional funding will help maintain Benicia's financial viability as a full-service city and protect the small-town quality of life. And many streets in Benicia have cracked or buckled sidewalks or no sidewalks at all, and many roads have potholes and other unsafe driving conditions, and additional funding is needed to fix hazardous road conditions and maintain 94 miles of city streets and roads so motorists, pedestrians, buses, cyclists, and police and fire safety vehicles are saved. And additional funding is needed to ensure that our 31 local parks are properly maintained as safe spaces for children to play and families to visit. And Benicia needs local control over local funds for local needs. And pursuant to California Revenue and Taxation Code 7285.9, the City of Benicia has the authority to levy a transaction and use tax for general purposes, and the city would like to levy a 1% transaction and use tax for general purposes to fund essential city services. And the city believes only locally approved voter funding sources would guarantee that new revenue stays in Benicia to help the city provide essential service to residents. And that's the summary of the text. And so with that, Mr. Simpkins, you have 10 minutes.
Oh, there. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you to the League for hosting us today. Again, my name is Bill Simpkins. I run a repair shop in town for the last 30 years. I'm talking here about Measure C today. I think it's an interesting name they picked for the measure here. It could have been the B, but it could have been D or F as well. I think there's sort of a comparison between vitamin C. It's good for us. It's sort of a slick ad campaign that they've come up with here. I'm not sure what the city has actually budgeted for the campaign, but From all the signs and the fancy website, it looks like there's quite a bit. We see mailers coming out. Obviously, it looks to me like more like they're trying to, a last-ditch effort to patch a very big hole in the deficit that can't be hidden much more. They call it our way to protect our small-town quality of life. It sounds more like extortion, protect or else. I believe there's sort of an intent to deceive here. Is it a short-term expenditure plan or a 5-year tax, or is it just really a forever tax? It's just come out that Livermore is proposing a smaller 0.5% tax with a 2-year term to get BART, which we will probably never have. They didn't conceive even a smaller tax, say 0.125% over a short period. No, it's a 100% or more increase in taxation. As you should know, 6% of the total sales tax goes to the state, and the county and city fight over the 1.675%, which could be 0.675 or so. So I'm not sure what the numbers are, but so if we added a full 1%, this would more than double what the city already receives. This is kind of somewhat alarming and outrageous. The entire council, all 5, agreed to this tax. But if you read the analysis written by the city attorney, you see a clear intent to make it hard to reverse this tax. The provision only requires a simple majority to pass a tax, but it would take 4/5 of the council to repeal it. So 4 of those 5 would have to reverse their decision. This is a forever tax. This is not going to happen that way. If anyone has gotten to read the content of this bill, it's all about maintaining whatever level of service you believe they are performing. I believe with the salaries and pensions at approximately 80% or more, the city is probably bankrupt. If you recall the city of Bell, our town appears to have similar issues. The brain is dead, the body just hasn't figured that out yet. The private sector in our town is pretty much aware that employee costs cannot be more than 40% of gross sales. In Benicia, they're at 80, 90% and more, and these pension plans are growing and growing. I have no answer to the logic. Benicia, for comparison, has a $30 million budget with 27,000 people. Lafayette, with similar population, has got a $12 million budget, and they seem to be doing just fine. I'll add here that Alamo is not even a city, it's a township. Quite wealthy area. They're quite happy not having a city there. They don't have taxes, increases, et cetera, that's going to keep affecting them constantly. Another issue is, didn't we just come out of the, let me start over. Didn't we just come through one of our hardest recessions in U.S. history? Most would argue that we're still in the economic doldrums with the labor participation rate at record lows and the long-term unemployment rate at record highs. California is now the nation with the largest poverty rate, even over Mississippi. Majority of citizens of Benicia are struggling at over half the annual salary of typical city workers. Folks are struggling to pay their bills and taxes enough already today, and now we're expected to pay more. The cities could easily fill almost any job with people making much lower wages because of unemployment and skilled workers looking for work. It is a spending problem, not a revenue issue. About 80% of the city budget today goes to pay its bureaucracy. What will change with these new funds? Most likely nothing. The city will continue to raise salaries and grow their benefits, pensions and salaries at double the amount of what typical citizens earn. There are no controls or precedents showing otherwise. They will see this money and want it for their pensions and benefits that most citizens do not have. Therefore, the city budget will continue to go up with no restraint as these new funds come into their hands. Take a look at who is supporting this measure, and you'll see that there is a conflict of interest in controlling spending. It is government-associated wage groups. So many today in Benicia are forced to live with less during these hard times. Simply stated, this no control on city wages trend will continue as the various interest groups plunder through this new trough of money. The city today collects more sales tax alone than the companies in the Benicia Industrial Park and the rest of Solano County combined. Yes, combined. Why can't the city be prudently forced by voters to live within its means with these ample funds? Instead, as an example, they would rather let go over 20 volunteer, no wage, no pension firemen and hire expensive full-time firemen. Instead, rather than economically reduce city pensions and wages, they demand more money. Instead, rather than come up with a firm commitment to control expenses, signed off on by all the unions, they only want more money that they promise to spend wisely. Yes, voters, there are no incentives to force them to save money and improve infrastructure. There is only a clear history of spending on themselves. One of my examples I would like to still talk about would be the fact that the city still has Black Fridays, whereas employees are actually supposed to be working an hour before and an hour after closing hours, but who is watching to make sure that they're actually doing anything for us? If you read the city's website, there are no underpaid salaries listed. Starting police make well over $70,000, while many officers and fire department staff will make well over $100,000, and then some. This is only a small town of 27,000, and then add to that the many department heads that make over $150,000. How about pensions? Does the private sector even know what these are anymore? The city workers have one of the highest per capita in the area. I would say this is Vallejo all over again. The city says they need more money to maintain our way of life. Besides what I've already said, what examples have they made to show any great cost savings? A few years ago, the cities had spent thousands of dollars paying for the 976 porn calls in downtown City Hall here. They had to put restraints on the calls because the employees just didn't seem to understand the word no. I hate to wonder what any city-provided cell phones today are costing us. Some of the other expenses that they've done here in town, we've had trees up and down First Street that were taken out because the holes weren't deep enough and the roots were popping up. Rather than just replacing the concrete or putting steel grates in, they took down a beautiful 30-year-old tree and we've had to start from scratch. The tree lights on First Street, they've constantly been blacking out. I think the city has taken 6 to 9 months or so to resolve it, if it has been resolved at all. I look at the green project of the solar panels that were put on most of the city properties. There isn't one point of water collection in any of these properties. It's only for sun. There's 2 ballparks 2 blocks south of here that could use the water. There's no cisterns put in these projects. So who is minding the mint here? And lastly, we find that the state attorney general is scolding our city for the poorly conceived EIR concerning the rail cars proposed by Valero. The points illustrated by her, as written up in Thursday's Benicia Herald, all too well illustrate the fact that our city government is not working for the people. If the city had asked for help in writing the EIR, possibly I might feel they could be trusted, but we can all see the answer here. I won't even attempt to explain why the wealthy folks, like I say, in Alamo, didn't adopt this. Again, it's not a revenue issue, it's all about spending. I would like to make a comment here too. If it's a full-service city, why does it have to cost twice as much as this neighboring Lafayette? Like I say, when they've got half the population, I've heard the word parity kicked around quite a bit whenever the unions ask for more money. This is not 150,000 population. Why would you need to pay people here in a town of 27,000 when you've got probably 4 or 5 times less crime, less congestion, less problems, etc.? If you want those kind of big dollars, you cross the bridge, you go to Concord. If you don't like that, you go through the tunnel. If you don't like that, you cross the Bay Bridge. Everybody in the construction, labor, service field understands that that's where the money's at, south of here. To say they need to get paid exactly as Fairfield, Vallejo, Concord, this is just, it's overkill. It's ridiculous. Like I say, anyway, summing up, I say no on C.
Thank you, Mr. Simpkins. One other thing I should probably mention for the audience, that we ask the audience to refrain from applauding or excuse me, or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for an issue or candidate. Okay, so we have questions. Mr. Simpkins will take the first question and then we'll alternate between. And some of these questions are written as if you were going to be the decision maker for the use of the funds, so just try your best to see how you'd like to respond. So the first one is, what controls the distribution of Measure C funds? Are there any restrictions? Mr. Simpkins, you have 1 minute.
From what I read on the city's website, they talk specifically about spending on certain projects, but that's it. There is no caps listed anywhere that once those projects are paid for, the money wouldn't be spent on salaries. So, yes. No, there is no explanation.
Mr. Archimedes.
Well, there'll be a citizen oversight committee specifically that will look at these issues and the spending for the revenue that is accompanying this proposed increase. Then you have the city council. You also have outside auditors. So there's multiple checks incorporated in the system.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Archimedes, you'll be starting the second question. I've seen the list of expenditures of Measure C. If Measure C passes, might there be others, like more money for parks and the museum, for example?
I think that my understanding is the list isn't chiseled in stone. That's going to be a final council decision that's made after, if and when the measure, the sales tax measure passes. I think that in regards to other funding issues, that's going to be part of the overall budget process that the city goes through right now. And that's a pretty transparent and community inclusive process. So if there was more money there, there's going to be opportunities to have that money invested in particular projects.
Mr. Simpkins would like me to repeat the question?
I don't agree. Transparency is not something that happens here in Benicia. The money's being spent. We have no idea where most of the money's being going to here. I mean, if you ask us questions like, what's the budget of the police department? What's the budget of the fire department? Mike's a much better speaker than I am, so he's well-versed in a lot of the stuff here, but I hear a lot of answers that just sounds like, it's just a circle. There's not really anything specific. Professional talk that doesn't promise anything, so anyway.
Thank you. And you'll be taking the next question. Could the pay cut taken by city employees be restored? Mr. Simpkins, you have 1 minute.
Could you rephrase that?
Could the pay cut taken by city employees be restored?
Well, as I said before, the pay cuts, $100,000 here, $100,000 there, they're getting probably double. The per capita income in Benicia is exactly, according to the websites, is $31,000. They need to have their pay cuts restored. The private sector is hurting. These people are making probably twice as what so why restore it? How about we reverse the jobs and save some money internally?
Okay. Mr. Archimedes.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Could the pay cuts taken by city employees be restored?
Well, the city has bargains with, I can't remember how many bargaining groups that represent the city employees. I believe right now that a couple of the bargaining groups have signed 2-year contracts, so they're 2 years out from this year, thereabouts. I think the rest of the bargaining groups have signed contracts that go through 2017. And so this is just an ongoing process that the contracts are negotiated anywhere. I've seen them anywhere from 1 year to about 3 years. I don't think we'll see 5-year contracts anymore. So yes, anything, when you sit down in a bargaining session, anything's up for grabs, at least initially.
Okay. Mr. Archimedes, this is going to take the next one. Were there other revenue sources explored rather than a sales tax?
Yes. The city looked at, just to give you an example, the city looked at its areas where it's receiving lease income. And gosh, I think primarily because of the new billboard sign that's on 680, the lease income to the city has gone up almost, I think, 250, 275%. I think it's like 60, I'm looking at Mario's, is it 65,000 a month? Yeah, it's about 65,000 a month, a substantial increase. So, answer the question, yes, they've looked at other sources and they've been successful in generating revenue from other sources.
Mr. Simpkin, were there other revenue sources explored rather than a sales tax?
I'm not privy to that, obviously, but as again, I say, there's $30 million budget sitting here. I run my own business. I have been for many years. And if I had $1 million to spend on things, it would certainly be something. To have lots of employees, to have over 100 employees, and you're not sure where they're going, what they're doing all day long. To me, why don't we put this out to private bid? The Parks and Rec, the Public Works. Right now, the lighting for around town, not these traffic lights, but other lights are on a bid system or I don't know what you call it, that contract, I assume. It seems to me you could probably get two people to do what one person's getting paid for in the Parks and Rec department. Jobs are tight, unemployment's very high. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. And you get to answer the next one first. I understand that homeowners are responsible for their own sidewalks. Will this change if the sales tax is passed in all neighborhoods?
You asking me?
Yes.
I don't know where they heard that. I mean, I think that's kind of up to the neighborhood and the style of the sidewalk. Depends on where the city's easement starts and ends. I don't think it's a uniform thing around town. Some neighborhoods don't even have sidewalks, so maybe in the Highlands and West Manor, there's such a small setback that, yeah, they have to maintain that. So the question being is, who will maintain it?
Well, will the city take over maintaining them with this new sales tax?
They haven't shown any pattern of doing it in the last 50 years, so I don't see all of a sudden it's just gonna change because they get this 1% sales tax. Again, their history shows poorly. I mean, I've got, my street's 35 years old. They've been slurry sealed twice. I've got grass growing every time it rains out here. So when will it get done? Who knows?
Mr. Archimedes, I understand that homeowners are responsible for their own sidewalks. Will this change if the sales tax is passed in all neighborhoods?
It will not change the responsibility of homeowners. And I think that there's a little confusion there. There's liability issues where homeowners. I can't think of a time when homeowners have been required to replace huge chunks, large sections of sidewalks. But more importantly, this is a measure that is going to, 100% of this increase is going to come back to city coffers. It's over $3.7 million. And the money is earmarked for, part of that money is earmarked for public work improvements. So can't get too specific at this point, but it's going to help an already stretched budget reach a little bit further.
Okay. Mr. Archimedes, pardon me? Okay. Mr. Archimedes, you got to start. How will voters be assured that the basic services will be continued?
Well, the basic services are covered now, and with the council's oversight, with the Citizens Advisory Committee oversight, I think that, and just with general public opinion, you're going to find that, again, it's going to be a very transparent and open process. So I think if you're happy with the services you have now and satisfied with them, I can only anticipate that that will continue. Really, the issue here is that as you look at this measure, think about what you want to give up. And this isn't a scare tactic, this is just dollars talking. Do you want to give up your police response time? Do you want to give up your fire response time? Do you want to give up everything that we enjoy in this community? Because push comes to shove in July, something's got to give. If there isn't more money coming in, something else has to be cut.
Thank you. Mr. Simpkins.
That's been my point exactly. We're spending way too much internally on salaries and wages and pensions. This is Vallejo all over again. Why don't we just admit it? File bankruptcy, start over, rebuild the city's budget for salaries, et cetera here, as Vallejo has, and maybe we might get off on the right track. But to continue on as if everybody's just got deep pockets everywhere here. I mean, like I say, as I illustrated, Lafayette's a much wealthier town than we are. Same population, but half the budget. How do they do it? Well, they enjoy a quality of life over there, so I'm sorry. I think these people here are quite spoiled in what they've got here, so they should be more than thankful, the city employees here, that they've got these great jobs. And I think the management needs to start taking a look at the reality. Like I say, I hope it fails. I hope we go bust. End of story. But, you know, we need to really look at it. I say my business would love to have this kind of money, but we just don't have it in the private sector.
Okay. Now you each have 2 minutes to do a wrap-up, and Mr. Simpkins, you will start.
Oh, okay. Mike mentioned something, the facts in this last paragraph here about the percentage was earmarked for public works if this passes, and the rest would be that untransparent money that would just go up in the air. And as they said, they've held back salaries the last 5, 6 years, whatever here. I don't think anybody has really come back from this recession. It's still happening. It's not over with here. And then to basically say to them, we're going to keep giving you more money. Where's the comparison? Where's the reality here? We need a reality check here. Go look at other cities of the same size. Again, I can't repeat this enough times. We need to take a look internally. It's $30 million here. It's not, as my friend quite wisely wrote here, it's not a revenue issue. It's all about the spending issue here. We don't need to bring any more money in. We just need to look at the money we've got and do it. Every business has had to adapt and reinvent itself over the last few years. You've seen everybody do their different business change, different style. My business is going through changes. The city is still doing things that we've been doing for the last, who knows, 30, 40, 50 years. They don't seem to be able to adapt very well here. It takes forever to get things to really move around here. As I said about the lights on First Street, Mario dealt with this thing for months and months and months. Nobody knows how to fix the problem. And this is just a lighting issue. I hate to see with the bigger problems they don't seem to understand here. You say, I'll run the town and we'll cut the budget in half, but I'm not running for office. But I just, as a business owner, it's runaway madness here. Thank you.
Mr. Archimedes, you have 2 minutes.
Well, bankruptcy for a city is a long and arduous process, and I don't think that anybody wants to go down that path, and there's absolutely no reason. Frankly, Benicia wouldn't qualify. We're too well off right now. We have a reserve. But let's look at Vallejo for a second, and let's look at surrounding salaries. And let's see, didn't we recently just lose a police chief to Vallejo? And I can think of a city engineer that went to American Canyon, and I can think of a finance director that left here and went to Concord, and I can think of a public works director that left here and went to Vallejo Flood and Sanitation Control District. The wages, you can argue all you want about salaries and wages, but the reality is living in the Bay Area is expensive. We all know that. Benicia's wages are in the lower third of surrounding municipalities. People aren't overpaid here. And the examples I just gave you, I mean, people leave for a number of reasons. But in every single case, I think that I cited here, they got more money where they went. So Benicia is competitive and able to attract and retain good quality people, but in no way are the salaries here exorbitant or out of line. To think that you can just pull anybody in and do the specialized work that is required to run a city is naive, frankly. There's training, there's responsibilities. It's not, doesn't have direct comparisons to the private sector. It's very labor intensive, and it's labor intensive because of the demands of the community. If you look at a city like Lafayette, again, look at what their expenses are. See if they share a fire, see if they're in a fire district. See if they have a police force or if they use the local sheriff. This is your decision to make, but please, when you do it, compare apples to apples. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Archimedes. I'd like to thank you both for participating this morning, taking the time out of your day to come here with us. And I'd like to thank you, and I hope the audience will join me in a round of applause for our speakers.
There we go. We're going to take a very short break. We, as you said, we moved the agenda around, and we're going to allow Ms. Smith a moment to speak with the Prop 1 candidates, speakers on the water bond pros and cons. So it's a good time if you want to stand up, stretch your legs a little bit. One of the things I think I didn't say at the beginning is that we do have over on this table, We have many other, much more information about other propositions. Today, we're only hearing the state proposition 1, but we have the pros and cons for all the state propositions. We also have the easy voter guide, if you want to look that over. And if you haven't registered to vote, I kind of think this audience probably has, but we even have voter registration forms. If you haven't had a chance, if you've moved or need to update your voter registration information. So those are also over on that table. And Belinda will be back in a moment, and then we'll start with Prop 1.